What can be the worst forms of punishment? What about hammering poles from people's bottom right to their heads or getting them raped by wild beasts? Back in ancient and medieval times, more development was done in inventing new punishments for criminals than any other. There was a thirst to propose the most creative punishments that would make the person getting the punishment suffer just hearing about it. Today, when punishments have been made painless, the opposite was the case in ancient times. Punishments had to inflict terror, killing criminals and leaving a trauma for the people planning to commit any crime. Stupid man. How will you be punished? Present day. Criminal. Poisonous injection. Ancient criminal. Well, how should I start? First, I will be drowned to a point. Then I will be skinned alive. Then what's left of me will be fed to animals. Stupid man. Girls would love you for that. But what were those punishments? In this video, I will tell you about the worst punishments invented by the most sadist humans that give you pangs. Let's start with the bad ones and go to the real horrific ones. Number 10. The rack. A horrifying torture device, originated in early modern and medieval Europe. It was a time when various forms of physical torture were devised to force confessions and punish alleged wrongdoers. It continued in use until the 18th century, with documented instances dating back to the late 15th century. It was a simple, yet brutally effective tool. A rectangular frame with ropes or chains attached to each end, and a roller comprised the rack. The victim's ankles and wrists were tied to the rollers, securing them to the frame. Then the torturer would stretch the victim's limbs in opposite directions by turning the rollers, causing severe agony, often resulting in significant muscle damage, fractured bones, and dislocated joints. The victim endured both intense physical and psychological suffering. The excruciating sensation of the body being stretched was heightened by the tormentor, who maintained the pressure until the victim confessed. Number 9. Lingqi. Lingqi, also known as slow slicing or death by 1,000 cuts, was a torturous execution method in China. The condemned individual was tied to a post, and bits of skin and limbs were gradually removed one by one, typically ending in a final cut to the heart. In other cases, the criminal would be given literally 1,000 cuts, slicing the skin all over the body. Even if this does not sound horrific, little cuts all over the body compounded to give a pain that cannot be put into words. All the nerves in the body, feeling the sensation of pain, reached a point where they could not differentiate between various sensations. Slicing the skin or just tickling the body with a feather gave the same pain to the criminal. Man. Doctor, help this patient, please. Doctor. What happened to him? Man. He has got minor cuts. Doctor. Oh, that's not a problem. Nurse. The patient has died, doctor. Doctor. How many cuts did he have? Man. I think 1,000. Number 8. Keel hauling. A punishment crafted specifically for sailors, was developed by the Dutch Navy in the late 16th century. Offenders were bound with rope and dragged underwater from one end of the ship to the other. While many met their demise through drowning or internal injuries, theoretically, it wasn't always intended to be fatal. As an added bonus, those subjected to keel hauling often suffered merciless cuts from barnacles on the ship's bottom, called a keel, carrying the scars for life if they managed to survive. Number 7. Blood eagle. The blood eagle has its roots in Nordic legends of Viking executions. This gruesome ritual involved slashing the condemned's back to expose the ribs, which were then broken and twisted upward to mimic wings. Adding layers of cruelty, salt was poured into the wounds. In a final horrifying act, the lungs were pulled out and draped over the rib wings for a dreadful effect. Number 6. Poena culi. The punishment of the sack, or poena culi, was another strangely specific form of execution in ancient Rome, reserved for cases of killing one's parents or other close family members. In this punishment, the condemned individual was sewn into a leather sack. But that does not seem horrific, right? Well, in the leather sack, several animals, including a dog, a monkey, a snake, and a rooster, were added and then sewn. The entire bag was then tossed into the water, provoking a natural emergency response from the animals. Those animals, finding nowhere to run, bit and tormented the criminal, and the water ultimately would lead to the death of all. Man, is that a new kind of purse? What have you got in there? Criminal. Nothing. Man, what's that moving in it? Criminal. It's not what you think. Man, is it a new type of kink, bro? Number 5. Scaphism. recognized as one of the most dreadful and excruciating forms of torture, was described by the Greeks as a punishment used by the Persians, portraying them as nearly insane. In this method of execution, the accused was trapped between two boats, or within a hollowed-out tree trunk, forced to consume a diet of milk and honey. While the initial diet might not sound too severe, the milk and honey mixture eventually resulted in severe diarrhea confined within the wooden enclosure. The unfortunate condemned individual was then coated with more milk and honey and left exposed to the sun or near stagnant water, attracting insects to the filth and decay. The inevitable outcome was death, whether from dehydration, exposure, or bites and stings. Number 4. The Brazen Bull. The Brazen Bull shows us how creative humans can be in inventing sadistic punishments. Originating in ancient Greece, the Brazen Bull was the creation of Perilos of Athens in the 6th century BC. Commissioned by the Sicilian tyrant Phalaris in Acragas, the life-size bronze bull statue had an entrance on one side for placing victims before being sealed shut. A fire beneath the bull heated the metal until it glowed red, subjecting the victim to unbearable pain. The bull's head had a device that converted the screams of the victim into frightening and eerie real bull's cry. It intensified the psychological terror imposed on both the victim and witnesses. The victim's experience inside the Brazen Bull was terrifying, with the cramped space transforming into a chamber of excruciating pain as the bronze heated. The searing metal caused severe burns, resulting in delayed and agonizing death due to the intense heat and inadequate ventilation. Number 3. Flaying. Flaying means the practice of skinning, a punishment that extended beyond animals. In ancient times, humans were frequently subjected to punishment or torture by being skinned alive. Depending on the extent of skin removal, victims either perished or endured life as mentally scarred cripples. This method of torture gained infamy in Mesopotamia. Number 2. Impalement. Historically, impalement has been a gruesome method of execution involving the piercing of a person's body with a sharp stake or pole. This implement typically traverses the torso, either from the lower body to the upper body or the reverse of it. The process of impalement involves thrusting a pointed object, such as a stake, pole, spear, hook, or similar implement, through the body of the condemned individual. The method of impalement could vary, and in some instances, the stake would be inserted through the rectum or other orifices. The severity of the punishment often resulted in a slow and agonizing death. Historically, impalement served as a means of deterrence and a public spectacle designed to instill fear in the population. It was not only physically painful but also psychologically terrifying for witnesses. The act of impalement aimed to make a strong statement about the consequences of certain actions, reinforcing the authority and power of rulers or governing bodies. Number 1. Rape by wild animal to death. In the ancient Roman Empire, a profound show was highly valued, no matter how sinister and horrific it was. That's when a sadistic punishment of unleashing wild animals on the criminals took place. The audience saw the spectacle of animals mauling people to death. Particularly horrifying was the fate of women who, by specifically trained wild animals, were raped until they succumbed to death. Today, even if these worst punishments have ended, humans still carry the instinct to preserve them. That's why we see the most disturbing forms of punishment humans can invent in movies and real-life crimes. But still, they are less bad than piercing poles into people's rectums or getting them raped by wild animals. Do comment, like, and subscribe to this channel for more contents like this. See you on the next video.